for that. Thanks to all of you for being here. Also welcome to our Stanford friends and colleagues. John Levin, I'm an economist. John is an economist. Most of you know John is the president at Stanford. And I've known him for a long time. So yes, still rivals, but he and I talk all the time about what Stanford and Berkeley can do together. So it's a new era for these two wonderful institutions working even more closely together. So I want to be relatively quick here. What I thought I would do is, what are the things that I could say up here that might be more useful to you? I could jabber about an awful lot of things, but here are three things that I've learned that are very helpful to me, and I hope they'll be helpful to you. I tried to select things that are sort of founder relevant. So here we go, and I'll be relatively quick, as I said. This first one I'm using all the time these days, and I only learned it about 6 months ago. I was in a meeting with a facilitator, actually. It was a difficult conversation among senior people, and there were some ideas on the table. And the facilitator came in and said, all right, for this conversation, said this right up front, for this conversation, we're going to use yes, if as the principle. So put your if conditions on the table. What are your concerns? Get them out there. We got to hear them. We got to be honest, right? We've done that before. It won't work because of this. It'll make this person mad, whatever it is. But the default is yes. The default isn't no. And we're going to bring our creativity to eliminate or mitigate those if conditions. Now, that might sound like an obvious thing that people do automatically. It's not an obvious thing. Especially around university environments, and I realize most of you are going to be moving out of, if you haven't already moved out of university environments. But one way to think about university environments is to say, we're geared for critical thinking. We're geared for if conditions. We're really good at them. And, that can get pretty hostile to a new idea, right? And so I've talked a lot at Berkeley now. I'll go to my second idea in just a second, but it's sort of like, if you can talk about A to B transitions in your organizations, and this may not be quite the right one, but at Berkeley, I'm talking all the time now about we are moving from a culture of no because to a culture of yes if. And in email after email, I hear an idea and I think this is a great yes if opportunity. So give it a try. Sounds very tactical. It is very tactical. It's actually incredibly powerful. Okay, so that's idea number one. Learned that only about 6 months ago. Here's idea number two. Most of you have heard the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, or something like that. If I'm obsessed about something, I am obsessed about how leaders shape culture, whether in a startup or in a larger organization. It's not my field, as I mentioned. I'm an economist. It's mostly social psychology. But when I think about culture, a phrase like culture eating strategy for breakfast, that's a fun phrase. But I want to reframe it. And I think I've always thought of it this way. I want to talk about culture as strategy. Culture as strategy. How do you think about culture as just as fundamental a pillar of your strategy as anything else? The idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast is like drawing an artificial distinction between them. Let me use one example. Barry and I were talking about this example just this morning, right? Sort of like, if you thought about a university, so that Startup Campus book, right? It was written by like 100 people participated in putting it together. How did Berkeley evolve over the last 20 or 25 years in terms of the startup ecosystem? That's what the book is about. One element of that is, how do you shift faculty culture? I think, so I was an undergraduate here. I came back on the faculty in the early 1980s. Back then, early 1990s rather. Back then, I think there were faculty who had this idea that, we are a public research university. The startup thing, the commercialization thing, it didn't come as naturally to Berkeley as it did to some other universities. And so if you said, well, what N things, and it does take N where N is large, you better be pulling on a lot of levers. But if you're going to bring some intention, that's a key word. If you're going to bring some intention to moving faculty culture at a university or even in a big organization. Now, you might say, look, I don't have to worry in my company as a founder about people being geared towards success of this enterprise. I get that. But think about the example and think about what intention looks like for you. All right? So a couple of examples I mentioned to Barry, but I could have told 10, 20 or 25 or 30 examples. Here's one. We posted on a website about 2 years ago a slide, the 100 top faculty founders at Berkeley. I think 5 years ago, if we had posted something like that, a number of faculty would have said, take my name off the list. Yes, I'm a founder, but I'm a scholar first. That's kind of not where my persona is. Now we're getting faculty saying, I should be on that list. So that's part of the culture change. By the way, it's a click-through list. You can click on a name. It's like, wow, that's interesting research. Those are interesting startups. But that's not the point. Sort of like, interesting. So it's obviously a navigational aid for VCs and other people that want to connect to Berkeley ecosystem. But importantly, it's sort of like, this is an okay thing for faculty to be. All right, here's another small example. So think of it, again, through a culture lens. Here's a second one. I posted a memo that was not a public memo. It was written by the 10 UC campus system-wide provost to the 10 chancellors at the time in 2022. And it was a memo that said, from now on, innovation and entrepreneurship activity on behalf of the research faculty at Berkeley counts positively toward promotion and tenure. Now, I think an administrator might have said, yeah, that's like 3 years old. That's kind of in the books. It's sort of like, people didn't know it existed. I wanted people to see it. And if somebody was going to slap my wrist and say, take that down, that's not a public memo, it's sort of like, I'll take it down. Now, it's easy to post something like that or not post something like that. Where's the intention? Are you going to do it? So obviously, shifting faculty culture more toward entrepreneurship is not the problem you need to solve. But how do you bring intention to bringing your culture to where you need it to succeed? And think of culture as strategy, not culture as something that eats strategy for breakfast. Last one, and I'll be quicker. What do you hire for? All of you have a point of view. You've got startups. Here's something I'm hearing just so much, and I love it. Coachability. Hire for coachability. And if you say, well, how do I do that? Well, what are some of the things you're looking for? It's like, if you ask somebody, tell me something you've gone deep on. You're looking for curiosity, right? You're looking for that MO. Not everybody has it. Coachability, right? Tell me something when you receive some feedback. Were you comfortable receiving it? Something that you failed. Tell me about something you failed, right? Can you give and receive feedback? That's part of coachability. Arrogance. Arrogance is rarely correlated with coachability. Right? So if you start to think about coachability, you can think about whether coachability is that high on your list. But I'm hearing a lot of big company and small company founders saying, coachability, especially in the era of AI, we have to get it right. We have to lean into it. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks to thank you.